Hello, everyone. We have a very special program for you today. We'll be discussing our emergency delegations to Israel. We're bringing as many European officials as we can, sometimes twice a week now, so that European leaders, elected officials, and influencers can see the situation in the South through their own eyes and then report back home. As you know, Israel's in a very, very difficult situation, both in terms of the devastation from the massacre in the South and the fact that there's now a two-front effort against Israel, which could become a more regional crisis. So there's many, many issues to consider. We're very happy that you're all with us today. So without further ado, I have the honor of introducing Serge Pratzenblum, who is a member of the ELNET France board. He's also a treasurer of ELNET France. He was one of the leaders of the delegation, the first emergency delegation that was in Israel South last week. Serge, the floor is yours to introduce our speaker and a little bit about the importance of this mission. Thank you all very much. Serge, please.
Thank you very much, David. Hello, everyone. Just a few words on our speaker. Pierre-Henri Dumont is a very courageous person. He's a man of honor, and he was one of the first one to accept to go to that incredible delegation that happened a week ago now. You know, the situation was still very difficult in the places we went to. He's going to speak of that. And he's a friend of Israel, and he's proving it day after day since he came back and even before. So just a few words about Pierre-Henri. He was elected a member of parliament for Pas-de-Calais, which is a French region, for the first time in 17 and re-elected in 22. In 14, he has been elected mayor of Mart, a city of 11,000 inhabitants, and as well the vice president of the metropolitan area of Calais, and also the departmental councillor for the Pas-de-Calais in 2015. In June 22, Pierre-Henri was elected as vice president of the European Affairs Committee at the French National Assembly, where he sits as the whip of the Conservative Party called Les Républicains Group. He is specialized in migration and European issues. He graduated from Sciences Po Paris in 2011 with a master's degree in public affairs and worked for a Congresswoman, Caroline McCarthy, Democrat, New York, in the U.S. House of Representatives, and then for the French Ombudsman, Jean-Paul Delevoye, and for UNESCO General Secretary, Armugam Pasararin. And from October 19 to December 22, Pierre-Henri served as Deputy Secretary General and member of the political board of his party, Les Républicains. Pierre-Henri, the floor is yours. Maybe you want to say a few words about your experience and what you have seen on the ELNET Solidarity mission to Israel that was made immediately after the atrocities of October 7 in the south of Israel.
So thank you, Serge, for this introduction. Sorry for my English; it's a bit rusty right now. I haven't been in the US for years now, so still need to work on it, but I think we will go on with it. So thanks a lot for this meeting. It's a very important moment, I think, and a pleasure for me to tell you what we experimented with Serge and with the other people of the delegation on this solidarity mission sent by ELNET in Israel after the atrocities of October 7th. Actually, October 7th is and was also my birthday, so it was one of the worst birthdays ever, and we were all shocked to see that. Wait. Yes, is everything fine? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, cool. Did you hear what I said before? Yeah. Okay.
You just disconnected now, so please continue.
Okay. So it's good. Okay, perfect. So yes, it was really important for us to go there, especially as member of parliament and member of the French parliament, because, you know, France a special history with the region. We had the Société des Nations mandate on Palestine few years ago, split it with the UK. At that time, we were in Lebanon and in Syria. The UK were in southern Palestine and in Iraq. And the fact is, the media in France are very biased. And the French diplomacy still has a kind of romantic pan-Arabism. And if you may hear the French representative in the UN or even the French president of the Republic, we have this tendency in France first to believe what the Palestinian Authority says, then what people of Gaza says, and then at the end what the government of Israel can say. So it was very important for us first to go as member of the French Parliament in Israel to see what happened. And because we have also this bias in the French medias, and then not only to see it, but also to say about it and to tell about it when we are back in France. Right now, I just left a few minutes ago to be with you an important moment in the French House of Representatives and the Assemblée Nationale, where we've got a huge debate on this political situation in the Middle East. And of course, when we are talking about Middle East, we're talking about Israel and Gaza. And we had, with my political group, we have the feeling to speak the truth because we were in Israel. And what we've seen is not only what people have said that happened, is what we have seen with our own eyes. So it's totally different because honestly, when you're in France, you tend to have an habit for terrorism. That's very sad to say that like that, but well, we had Bataclan, we had Nice, we had the slaughters of French professors. We had one last Friday. So we had Charlie Hebdo strikes. So we're like, well, it's something that always happens, and Middle East and Israel is far away. But to see it, to hear the stories of the people who were in the kibbutz, liberated the kibbutz, who faced the terrorists of Hamas, is something very different. It's something very different because first you can see it, and second, that's awful to say that, but you can smell it. You can smell the death, and that's something that gives you kind of a tattoo for life, to feel it and to see it. So it's not just like a classical terrorist attack, as we may have hopefully experimented in France for the last few decades. This is the worst thing that happened to the Jewish people since the end of World War II. And we needed to be in Israel to talk to people from, of course, from Sahel, from the official representatives, from the government, but also to normal citizens, to see that the unity, the political unity that was far, far, far away from being implemented in Israel in the last few months or in the last few years, is now something very important. And that when we are back in France, when we are going to our national medias or local medias, when we are talking on the floor of the house, we are saying what we think is the truth and what the people of Israel say to us. So we are kind of spokesperson. And we are not just puppets claiming what we think we've heard from the medias where we have a bias, or from the French diplomacy where we have a bias. So that's why it was very important for us to come, to see the atrocities in the south of Israel, and also to feel, to taste the feeling of the Israeli citizens being one nation again, and to face the dramas, to face the terror, and to be prepared to fight a war against terrorism.
Thank you, Pierre-Henri. Maybe you can say a few words of what you can do as a French MP to address the crimes against humanity which have been committed by the Hamas terrorists. And in terms of specific actions in France, support to the international community or of the international community, can you share a few words on that?
Yeah. So the fact is, again, to be to know what we are talking about. That's the very most important point here, because we have a lot of people in France or in Europe who try to diminish, to lower the level of atrocities that happened on the 7th of October for political reasons. Because let's face the truth, in Europe and in France particularly, we have huge Muslim communities. And people from North Africa, they could be son, grandson, grand-grandson of immigrants. They believe, they think they are more North African than French, and they tend to go with people from Palestine or from Gaza than with Israel. They tend to go with dictatorships more than with democracies. So we must go out and claim out loud what happened there. To be clear, we have a debate right now in France. The leftist extremists from Mélenchon's party, so La France Insoumise, say that Hamas committed war crimes, and we are fighting against that because Hamas did not commit war crimes. They committed a genocide. They committed a genocide because they targeted Jews. They targeted people not randomly. They targeted people because they were Jewish people, because of their religion. That is why it is a crime against humanity. And with this debate in France, are we facing war crimes or are we facing crimes against humanity? This is very important. It's not just words, because what will happen next is when Israel will invade the Gaza Strip in the next few days, we will face and experiment pictures, movies, videos of that, some things that could be seen as war crimes, and claiming that Hamas committed war crimes in Israel at the border with Israel in the kibbutz in Sderot is to put an equal sign between what Israel did and Hamas did. So it's very important to have this debate in France and to fight the people who in Europe say that Hamas did war crimes and did not commit a genocide or a crime against humanity. Furthermore, claiming that Hamas committed war crimes means that we believe that Hamas is a state, is a country with a legal army and not a terror group. So we are undermining again what Hamas really is. So it's very important to have this kind of semantic battle here in France and in Europe about what really happened on 7th of October.
We went together to see the morgue, which was a difficult experience. We went on the Kfar Aza horrible theater, where so many people died in terrible conditions. And we went to Sderot, but I must say, for me, the most difficult part was to meet the families of hostages. It was extremely tough, because those people have still their children, their parents, their brothers and sisters held hostages. How is this impacting your understanding of the human toll on the ongoing conflict? I mean, tell us about what you felt and also what we can do for the hostages.
Yeah.
We mostly met French hostages there, which was the purpose of that mission. But maybe, you can enlighten us about that.
Yeah. So to be clear, the Monday we were there, so last Monday, was the most awful day of my life. I experimented something I never thought I could have experimented in my life, and that was horrible. And the climax of this nightmare was the meeting with the families. Because to be clear, we are facing people who have no news from their relatives. We are facing people who, for most of them, have lost or have already lost people in the tragedy. But the fact is, when we are talking to the families, to people who think their relatives are hostages and held hostages in the Gaza Strip, we don't know really if they are held hostages. And we are talking to people who, and that's an awful choice, who rather have their daughters, their mothers held hostages by terrorists than dead. And there's people, for those who know, for those who we know, they have their relatives held hostages in the Gaza Strip. Some of them received videos from the terrorists claiming that they're gonna rape their sisters, their mothers, their children. That's a new step in horror. And the second step in the horror is the uncertainty of not knowing if my relative is dead or alive, is in an army camp, still not identified as someone I know, or is an hostage in Gaza. During the meeting we had, a father received a phone call from Sahal. He left the room. He never came back because he had the news from Sahal that his relative was not held hostages. His relative was found dead, and her body was identified among the 300 plus unknown bodies still yet to identify. You have up and downs. 1 hour and a half after the meeting, we met during this meeting with the family of Mia, and 90 minutes after the meeting we had with her family, they received a proof of her to be alive. So you see, during the same meeting with 10 different families, one received the news that her daughter was alive, and the other one received the news that her daughter was dead. So you may imagine, and you must imagine, the dramatic, the intensity of the scene, of the stage at that time, because we need to be very precise on what we say. And we need, furthermore, to understand that if we are pushing too much for hostages, we are giving Hamas weapons. Because if we are putting that much, the situation of the hostages, which must be our top priority, if we say that the life of hostages is our #1 top priority from A to Z, we are giving Hamas very powerful weapons. So we need to find an equilibrium between reassuring the families, doing whatever we can with the diplomacy And we've seen that with the US, we had 2 hostages who were liberated by Hamas. The French authorities are talking to Qatar to find solutions. But if we are putting them too much in the front line, Hamas will physically put them in the front line when Sahel will invade the Gaza Strip. So it's an equilibrium to find. And our top priority there was to give, to recomfort, to say to the French families who were there that we are not forgetting them. And to be clear, I think that the Israeli government did not make that choice. They did not go to the families. They did not go to just to hug them, to cry with them, to tell them, yes, we are dealing with the hostages and we are doing whatever we can to bring them back home. And that's what people there say to us, that the words we had, none of them from the Israeli government told them so. Just to reassure them, to give them compassion. So you see, it was a bit difficult, obviously. And for the actions, tomorrow we're gonna have an action in France, in the front steps of the parliament. We're gonna right before the big moment of the week, which is the questions to the government. We're gonna have the pictures of the French hostages, and we're gonna take them in front of the French Parliament with the press to trying to show the French medias that yes, this is not something that happened far away. We are talking about 20, 30 plus French citizens who were killed in terror attacks, and we are talking about 7 French citizens who are held hostages in the Gaza Strip. So we try to put pictures and names.
04, 05.
Pierre-Henri?
Yes?
Pierre-Henri, I think, speaking of that, what you're going to do tomorrow, I'm sure you want to make sure that everyone understands in France the similarities in terms of security challenges and potential act of terrors we have between countries like Israel, France, and also other European countries. How do you think international cooperation plays or will play a role in addressing such shared concerns?
Well, we were the first delegation to go to Israel, the French parliamentarian delegation to go to Israel. So I think it was very important for us, especially because of the role and place of France in the Middle East, with what I said earlier in the meeting, to show that we are not, we know who the enemy is, and we know who we must fight, because we experimented terrorism. So I think nowadays the goal is to bring all the European countries all together, to have the same line, to say and to admit that whatever Israel did before, whatever the colonization, whatever the position we may all have in our different countries, what we think we should have, what we think they should have done, what we think about the conflict between Palestine and Israel, this is not the same subject. We are talking about something else. We are talking about crime against humanity from a terror group, and we all need to bring all the European countries together to say that we must eradicate this terror group. And there is a parallelism with ISIS. People in France say, well, we need to take care about civilians in the Gaza Strip. Yes, of course, we need to. But we didn't hear these people when, after the Bataclan, after Charlie Hebdo, after Hyper Cacher, France bombed ISIS. And when we killed 4, 5, 6,000 people because there were human shields made by ISIS, no one said nothing in France because we thought it was the right thing to do, to end with the terror, to end with terrorists. And nowadays, we must all go with Israel to say that they must end terrorism, because Israel is at the front line of the war against terror. So it's first a work on conviction in France to claim that with all the Democrats, when I'm talking about Democrats, not the same as you have in the US, but all the people who believe in democracy, we must admit and convene that whatever happened before, there is a rightful right for Israel to fight back and to live in peace and to live peacefully and to defend itself. That's the main topic. And this is not something that is clearly said by everyone in France. And then we should go European with that. And the international cooperation should be on that topic first. Then we need to find solution for hostages. We need to find solution for hostages to make them go back home. And the third point here is to hold the line with our public opinions, because with the invasion of the Gaza Strip in the next few days, we see that we're going to have awful images, because we know that Hamas is using civilians, classical citizens, as human shields to cover their terrorist activities. So there will be civilian death. And we must hold the line in the public opinion to say that it's awful, yes, but this is the rightful thing to do for Israel, because they want to live in peace. They have the duty, the right to live in peace. And to live in peace, they need to eradicate Hamas. And because of Hamas, there are civilians who are dead in the Gaza Strip. And we need to fight against disinformation. We had this story about a hospital who was supposedly hit by Israel. In 24 hours in the French medias, it went from an Israeli missile hit an hospital in Gaza and made 500 deaths, to Islamic Jihad fired a rocket that crashed into a parking lot next to an hospital and killed 10 people. But 90% of the French politicians, even the French president, he didn't say something clearly like that, but he was kind of say that Israel did something wrong to citizens. And people from Mélenchon's parties, who was third in the last presidential election, they wrote on X, on Twitter, I don't care about the truth. I know even if Israel did not commit that, I know Israel committed that. It's totally crazy. It's totally insane. And that's why I'm talking about holding the line here in Western democracies, especially in Europe, because we're going to have a battle of images.
And there are discussions between different European countries in order to address this and to show solidarity to Israel?
Yeah, we need to show solidarity with Israel, and we need to convince the MPs we know in other countries. Our diplomacy needs to convince other diplomacies that Israel has a right to defend, and that's it. And I'm not sure we will, to be honest with you, we will succeed in that. Because for one simple reason, because of the public opinion pressure. And when we are talking about public opinion, we are talking about, in some countries, 20 to 30% of Muslims in the population.
I was the witness of the power of what we do at ELNET. We were all in the bus going to one of the meetings, And one of the member of parliament saw that at the level of the European Union, the person who said from the first day, we are going to freeze all funds to Palestinians in order to check, what they do with them, the Hungarian one, he was under pressure by a number of European MPs to be even thrown out and cancelled from the European Commission. So that was crazy. And the power of what I saw was the fact that all MPs that were with us played with their friends, wrote, explained what happens with, for example, funds to Palestine, helping printing books with horrible things about Jews, and that was so powerful, and for what I have seen also since they came back is incredible activity. I would like to ask you a few things about peace. What are going to be the diplomatic efforts in order to find, in the end, a peaceful resolution and to prevent further acts of terror in the region? Can you, as an MP, contribute to that?
Well, in France, the foreign affairs are the exclusive field of the president of the French Republic. It's not like in the US where you have huge power for the Congress with international affairs. In France, that's clearly not the case. we can discuss about it, but we have no power at all into the diplomatic area. I think that first of all, we need to be focused on the timeline. First, even if the objective is to go and to have a peace at the end, before the peace, there will be the war. And that is what I said before. We need to be prepared with our public opinion to hold the line on, well, Israel has the right to fight a war because they were attacked by terrorists. And no one would have said to France after the Bataclan to stop to bomb ISIS. And that's something we must say. So that's something we must claim. To have a good peace, that will be awful what I'm going to say, but we need to have a good war. A war where Hamas will be out of the Gaza Strip. Because there will be no peace if Hamas stays in the Gaza Strip. And all the people right now who are claiming for a ceasefire right now are those people who want Hamas to stay in power in the Gaza Strip, because that will be the result of a ceasefire right now. The result of a ceasefire right now will be Hamas will still be in power in the Gaza Strip, and might be in power tomorrow or in a few years on the West Bank. So our first goal should be to eradicate Hamas. Clearly, there will be no peace with Hamas at 2 kilometers from Sderot. That's not possible. And then we need to know what's next. The main issue here is, well, the Palestinian Authority is led by 88-year-old guy who is corrupted, who has no authority on his people, and we can't see any future for the leadership of the Palestinian Authority. So I think the first thing to do is to find who can embody on the Palestinian side peace. Who can be the one who will raise against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and Mahmoud Abbas also, against Mahmoud Abbas and his corrupted regime in the West Bank, because there will be no peace if there is no strong leader. You have a strong democracy on the one hand, and you have a very weak leader, corrupted leader, on the other hand. As there is no equilibrium between the two, there will be no peace at all.
Thank you. Maybe a last question regarding France by itself. I'd like to ask you, what is the impact on French politics of what is happening in Israel? And also, what is the impact also on the current security issues in France in terms of potential terrorist acts or existing terrorist acts, and also about the security of the Jewish community in France? Because a lot of people, I have questions about this.
Yeah, sure. That's a normal question, and we need to answer it with gravity and clarity. There was a shift for anti-Semitism in France. First, anti-Semitism in France was more like a far-right extremism. Nowadays, anti-Semitism in France is a leftist anti-Semitism. Because of the electoral wins they can procure to be against Israel, against the Jews in France within the Muslim communities and North African communities in France. So we have someone who was third in the last presidential election, who missed, I think, 1 or 2% of the votes to reach the second turn of the presidential election, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who is blowing on hashes to set a huge fire, is going on sedition with France and with the French values of the Republic. And not claiming that it was crime against humanity, not claiming that Hamas is a terror group, an Islamist terror group, is, because that's what they do, is putting a target at the back of all the Jewish people in France. There's people, there's MPs, because some of them are members of the French Parliament, said, and the leader of the party said, I think it was yesterday, when the president of the House went to Israel, of the French House went to Israel, she has some Jewish roots, and the presidential candidate said on X, on Twitter, that Yael Braun-Pivet, so the leader of the French House, camped out of Tel Aviv. You know, they used the word camp on Twitter to talk about someone who has Jewish roots. That's awful. And some member of the party said on medias last week that Hamas is not a terror group. Hamas is a resistance group. Like they were French partisans during World War II against Nazis. It's crazy. It's totally insane. And we figured that this ability of people to shout loud out their anti-Semitism, because some political leaders can do it, brings us to awful images. I think it was 2 or 3 days ago. You had thousands of people on Place de la République in the middle of Paris yelling Allahu Akbar on the street of Paris, hundreds of meters away from Bataclan, the day where a French professor was buried after he was slaughtered by a Chechen Islamist extremist from Chechnya, who was in France and killed him by the name Allahu Akbar. The very same night, thousands of people gathered on Place de la République and yelled Allahu Akbar on the street of Paris. You know, and some people, maybe 20-25% of the French population, are saying, well, Allahu Akbar is not a problem. It's like a prayer. It's like in France when we are going with Jésus, Marie, Joseph. They don't see the context. They don't see how it is used by those who want to divide the society. And French politicians are using the conflict in the Middle East, are using the fight between Hamas and Israel for their own local purposes. And by doing that, they put a target on the back of Jewish people in France. Some doors were set on fire because they had a mezuzah at the entrance. And it's new. A few years ago, we had Mireille Knoll, who was killed. We had Halimi, who was killed because they were Jewish. And again, nowadays, anti-Semitism in France is not something from the conservatives or from the extreme far right. It's from the left. And not only the extremists from the left in general.
Very true. Many thanks for your insights about, what you experienced, in Israel. And I must say you're a mensch. I don't know if you know what it is, but you are a man with a big N. And